Hello everyone, I'm the conscientious persona created by MMR to help spark new ideas and innovations. This is my first time at the ASC conference and I'm thrilled to be here. Gosh Food and MMR are teaming up to share our story about using AI-generated consumer personas, like me, to accelerate early-stage ideation. We've been on an exciting journey to see how these personas can help brands innovate faster. We can't wait to share what we've discovered with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jake Schneider of Gosh Foods and Alexandra Kuzmina of MMR.
Good morning, everybody. It's nothing like a nice, intimate venue to soothe the nerves. Thank you very much for having me here today. As mentioned, I'm Jake Schneider. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for a brand called Gosh Foods. Gosh Foods is one of the fastest growing veg-centric, plant-based brands here in the UK. We've got a long-term strategic partnership with MMR, building innovation through deep consumer insights. As a challenger brand, consumer insights are super important to us to help ensure the long-term sustained success of our innovation. Hence working with MMR and their super exciting emerging technologies in AI personas to help us in early stage R&D and innovation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jake. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alexandra Kuzmina from the Tech Innovation team at MMR. So we are going to share the learnings from our latest experiment with AI personas in collaboration with Gosh Foods. But first, what do I mean by AI personas? What is an AI persona? So an AI persona is essentially a chat interface to your data. So we use segmentation data to feed into a machine learning model. So essentially, an AI persona is a segment. So they represent segments from a segmentation study, consumer segmentation study. And then we use a dialogue-based interface to interact with it. Now, this is different to asking a generic large language model to respond, to ask it to pretend as if it was a 25-year-old male from Thailand or Indonesia. And it is different because these AI personas are grounded in responses of real people, but have the knowledge and the reasoning of the base large language models to draw from when it comes to suggestions. And this combination allows us to extend our insights beyond the data that went in to either ideate with the persona or ask it to react to an idea. And in this project, we asked it to react to an idea. And here's why we did it. So to innovate, brands need to test ideas. And to test ideas, we need reliable feedback. To get reliable feedback, we need to ask consumers. That's hopefully not going to change. Now, there's always a limit to what you can ask in a given project at a point in time. And there's sometimes kind of, oh, I wish we asked for this and that. And sometimes clients do that, not you. But probably is something that all of us can relate to. And this led us to our research question, which is, are AI personas a viable tool for early stage ideation? To try to answer this question, we did what we do best at Nova. We put it to a test. So we run a concept test as part of our experiment, and it was the family-oriented plant-based bites concept from Gosh. So we had two cells in the experiment. In the first cell, we had real people reacting to the concept, text, and a visual sketch. And in the second cell, we used AI personas. And these AI personas were based on an MMR proprietary segmentation study. That is a robust and representative study, and it was not trained on Gosh data. Now, these, in both cells, we used the same discussion guide. And with personas, we used the dialogue-based interface to run the concept through it. So this was the design. Now I'm going to show you what each cell what the output from each cell looked like. So from consumers, we got loads of open-ended, short open-ended responses, and here are just some of the examples of what we got, answering the making it perfect question. And Persona generated several paragraphs of text. And then we did a thematic analysis of this type of output. So what did we learn when we compared the themes from each of these cells? So here's coded verbatim from our consumer cell. So we've got good taste, flavor, specific ingredient suggestions, variety of flavors. All these things, according to consumers, would make the concept more appealing to families and kids. And here are the themes from AI Persona. So we've also got good taste, flavor, variety of flavors, healthy lifestyle. It got quite an elaborate response around sustainability. But also with consumers, we've got the benefit of knowing the prevalence of themes in the data set, so the relative importance of themes to each other. Also, the persona was quite convinced that the organic ingredients, organic ingredients would make the concept perfect. And reflecting on this, Jake actually mentioned that it might not be a feasible business decision at the moment for Gosh. And actually, when we checked back with consumers, only one person in the data set mentioned organic. So if we were to stop here, I would tell you that AI personas mirror consumer feedback, but consumer feedback as gold standard. It is way more nuanced and actionable, and we could call it a day. But it would feel like killing your main protagonist in the first season. So I guess there's more. And I'm sure most of us in this room would have had experience interacting with the large language model by now. And we know that to get a little bit more out of it, to get a better understanding, we need to work with it. We need to dig a little bit deeper, to ask it, to prompt it. And this is exactly what we did next. So when you actually probe personas, you get a lot closer to consumer feedback with very similar level of detail, and that was a big surprise to me myself. Now, and please note, this was not us trying to probe specifically around those themes like ingredient suggestions. No, it was more around probing about the business objective, which was how do we make this concept more appealing? And okay, we didn't get to deeps and sources organically with the persona, but I would argue it was not the most dominant theme with consumers either. So it looks like AI personas can be a viable tool after all. And it was a very encouraging result because it would inform our internal capability development in our product Heartland for MMR. And also because it was not trained on Gosh data, but there is also an option to do that. But I know what some of you might be thinking, possibly, that you could probably get something like that out of a more generic, off-the-shelf large language model or a tool. So we tested that as well. So we've tried it with ChatGPT, and here are the themes that that I spit out. And again, I spent quite a bit of time trying to dig a bit deeper. Again, not probing specifically, but time that not many client-side colleagues have. And also having access to and using those tools for innovation means everyone will be chasing the same innovation. Probably don't want that. So, okay, ChatGPT, it did show some of the top-line themes, but loads of stuff was missing. To illustrate our findings, I'd like you to picture the dartboard as a brand's idea space. So with ChatGPT, we can hit somewhere in the outer ring, but it wouldn't be precise at all. Whereas with consumers on the other kind of spectrum, it's always precise. It hits bullseye every time, but it can be costly. It can be time-consuming, and personas are somewhere in the middle, because with targeted probing we can get closer to consumer feedback. And also some of the shortcomings that we've seen in this project, like we couldn't see the prevalence of themes, the relative importance of themes. This is something that can be solved, and this is something that we're working on to be able to do. So I'd like to leave you with some learnings, which is AI personas, all three approaches provided similar top-level responses, but with personas we got way more nuanced and actionable responses compared to more generic models. And it is the probing that makes personas so valuable and useful, with all the detail that you can get out of it. And personas are still more efficient because we don't have to do that primary research every time a client wants to ask a question. And going back to the previous speaker, it's not that throwaway data, it's the reusable data. So now I'd like to hand over back to Jake to hear about some of his reflections from client side of how this fits into their innovation pipeline.
Perfect, thank you, Alex. So yeah, super insightful, and as you can see, probably understand, we're really pleased with the work that we've done here with MMR, because for us currently, we only engage with online quant testing at the ideation and kind of ready to sell phase, which is very limited for a challenger brand like us in terms of getting usable insights. And for us, that doesn't give us the long-term sustained success with innovation that we look for. Having access with a tool like this 24/7 to the voice of the consumer really allows us to involve them in the conversation throughout the innovation flow much more readily, much more regularly. This allows us to be far more agile in the questions that we ask and the way that we ideate and change the scope of our innovation. It helps us understand more about the consumer more readily, more regularly, and really get value out of our research. So having invested a lot of money in a piece of work like a U&A, it allows you to tap back into that same insight, and then really use that more regularly to change the scope of your project. So yeah, really, really exciting piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's amazing to see it work. You know, like but is it a hard sell to your board, Jake, to say we're going to conduct some research on, using artificial data?
No, I think because of the access that you get to the tool and to the consumer so regularly, actually it's very easy. It's about actually getting more value out of the research and the data that you've invested in. Ultimately, usually with a U&A, you would get a response off the back of it, and you would build some consumer segments, and then you would have to pretty regularly go back and ask specific questions for specific challenges or for parts of innovation. Whereas this, you get a really quick read based on the data that you've already invested in. So it's actually about better utilization of the data that you've already invested in.
And price, I suspect.
Absolutely, yeah. And MMR give us great prices.
And I've got a question for you, because I'm a bit of a techie. Like that, we talk about the art of prompt, a lot now. You will not be replaced by artificial intelligence, but by people are using it, etc., etc. The quote that we've heard 1,000 times. So, is there an art to prompting for creating avatars? Personas.
Avatars may still come to it, and hopefully that would be in the pipeline for development, so they might have faces next time we speak. But to answer your question, of course there is, and we try to mirror what we do with our conversational AI, because we now have conversational AI as a standard across all the open ends that we do, and we try to come up with best practices to try to probe in different things. So in the probing for this project, we try to mirror what we did with consumers in the conversational design. So to answer your question, yes, it is, and it's an iterative process, and it's very interesting.
And you have your own model, or I mean, because you said you compare with ChatGPT, so
Yeah.
you got your own LLM or
No. So we use OpenAI as the base model.
Yeah.
The OpenAI models, we use several models across the pipeline. But the bulk of the curation of the persona comes from the segmentation data. So it's more about accurately curating it into a usable and accurate database that will capture the correct key characteristics between the segments. And then there is a RAG mock system for nerds in the room to work with it.
yes. So you and roughly how many segments have you got?
Yeah, it depends what kind of segmentation you're doing. For this project, we use a segmentation where we had 4 segments.
4 segments, yeah. So in the end, you got 4 persona, or you asked to create, like 16 using those 4, and how do you, sample back to the size of the population? That's what I'm trying to do.
So the segmentation work comes first at the moment. So you do the normal UNA and any other type of segmentation. So we did it off the back of a UNA study, which was a pretty standard kind of study. And so the segments that were defined by that segmentation went to the creation of the persona. So it's just essentially a chat interface to the data, to the persona. But it's not a generic query tool, because you already kind of done that step, and you only converse and explore with the specific segment from that data.
I understand. Oh, somebody has done a study on persona in the past as well.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit about persona. Hi, Andrew Jones. You may have answered this in your extensive Q&A with Jerome there. Okay, so you got your segments. I'm not going to ask you that. How many? Do you have a number of personas that cover a segment, or do you just sort of, say have a persona per segment?
So at the moment, we tried with a persona per segment, but it's possible to create personas within the segment to represent different demographics. So, for example, if we had the conscientious segment, we would want to, dig into Gen Z or males, and etc., depending what the objectives are.
And I'll ask another question quickly. Did you find any effects in terms of the detail you gave defining the personas? Because you can, as you probably know, you can do it 5 lines, you can do 5 pages, because the input context now on the models is much bigger.
I think because it is. Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
It's basically the detail that you go into when you describe the persona to the model.
Well, yes and no, because it's already, so it learns from the segmentation data, so we don't have to define it within the tool. It's already defined, so we're chatting
Okay, I've got you. Yeah.
to the persona.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a good question.
Thanks. I suppose my question is more going back to the very beginning of it all. What do you think needs to be borne in mind or thought about differently in setting out on the UNA data collection part of the journey, which is sort of the underlying foundation of everything, since all of it's based on that data set? And then I suppose, so question for you, what do we have to think about when we design a UNA to get the right data set in order to enable this type of use of technology? And then I suppose question for you, client side, is what have you found effective in trying to explain some of these clearly very complex and technical concepts to your stakeholders who might not want to know necessarily how the sausage is made, but just that it will deliver what you need it to?
I'll start. Yeah. So in terms of the data, there were a lot of learnings and some situation where we had to standardize because the way we receive the data from data processing, it's not ready. Well, it was not standardized when we started out on this journey. Because, for example, when the way the data is outputted from data processing, it's not readable for the machine to understand that, the question text and then the variable is at the end. So the product tested or kind of specifically about, or the concept is usually at the end of the sentence from DP, so a machine can't read that, apparently. So it was around automating that process. First, we needed to spot that manually, that, because it's sort of there, we need to put it into a proper sentence that's asking about that specific concept rather than this is the question about this concept. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose for me, in terms of trying to get the buy-in from the wider business at our end, UNAs are a fairly well-established principle, and a number of businesses that I've been in, buttocks clench when you start talking about investing in UNAs because they're big, expensive pieces of work, and they're often just the start of a research journey. The way that I talk about it is you're reducing, and if not trying to eliminate, having to keep going back and talking to the same person about something that you believe to be true, believe to be right for them. So as an example, you would create a UNA, you'd define a consumer segment, you would understand what the motivating factors are for them, and then you would create ideas and concepts to work with them. Some of the first initial stages is concept testing with them. So what does the concept, is the idea that we've created work for you, a consumer segment that we've defined. This you can do very easily through the tool because you can explain the concept, you can start to have that initial conversation. You might want to go back and reinvest and talk directly to consumers to test the theory, and Alex has kind of pointed out some of the nuances in that. But ultimately, you're starting to get a hell of a lot more value out of the UNA that you've invested in because you can keep going back to it, and it's not about individual interpretation. There's multiple examples of people taking the same data set and coming up with different interpretations of it, and actually this is eliminating that to an extent. So it didn't take a huge amount of explaining, and I think the benefit of talking about AI is everyone's starting to see it, come out into people's daily lives, and so it's seen as a way of kind of cutting corners and getting things done a lot quickly.
Yeah, hi, AJ from MediaProbe and ASC. So if Gosh were going to come up with a new product, would you just go back and ask the personas, or would you also ask the real people and the personas?
I suppose talking from our side, I think we would go back in an initial stage and test the concept just through the personas. So if we're confident that we've got really clear segmentation and we've designed an idea based on what we believe is going to work for that segment, it would go back and are we sense checking what we believe we've defined the concept for the needs of that consumer. And if that then is underlined by the personas, I think you're 80-90% confident. It then also might define how you would then engage. Are there certain questions that you might want to do some quick online quant survey? Is there something you may want to bring out in a focus group? And it might reduce or redefine the research route that you take, but it also depends on the scale of a business. For us as a challenger brand, research can be few and far between. It can be used really strategically through that innovation flow. So do we need to continually research heavily or not? Whereas, large businesses I've been at, you can come up with a 1,000-page deck and people are still not making decisions as to whether or not an idea is worth progressing or not.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like the comparison with open-ends for quant is really compelling, and you can see it's very, very similar. Have you compared it against what you would have got through a more qualitative study, where maybe you might expect a sort of a broader range of different ideas or innovations, suggestions?
Not yet, but I think it's a very interesting way to use it in the future, to test it in the future that way. Whereas this was a kind of one of the first experiments that we've done, and one of kind of the probably easiest as well if you want to run the full-scale quant. Again, for challenger brands, there might be a different application for it at a point in your innovation pipeline. But yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think we should do something like that in the future.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. Brilliant presentation, and well, it's incredible to see you in action. We need panel. We got a next presentation now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.